Hello, and good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to attend our virtual event, InterVision Cloud Tech Day. We appreciate you choosing to spend your time with us. My name is Christopher Cruz, and I'm the Director of Cloud Marketing here at InterVision. I'm very excited about the content we have to share with you today, and I think you'll find the conversation insightful. I'd like to extend a very special thank you to our key strategic partners at AWS and Zerto for joining us for this conversation today. They bring a tremendous amount of value to our services and solutions, and I'm confident their insights today will drive a lot of value in our conversation. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to introduce InterVision. InterVision is a strategic service provider with decades of experience helping IT leaders run, grow, and transform their business. We built solutions and technology partners to drive the outcomes that mean the most to your business. The outcome that we're focused on today, of course, is transforming the data center and IT operations through the power of cloud. On that subject, we're very proud of the fact that our track record of helping clients migrate and operate successfully in the cloud is reflected in our status as an AWS premier consulting partner with competencies in migration, DevOps, and storage. Additionally, our disaster recovery as a service offering has been recognized in Gartner's Magic Quadrant for 5 years in a row, which is every year since the inception of the report. As a strategic service provider, InterVision has built a comprehensive cloud portfolio of services and solutions to support your entire cloud adoption lifecycle. Regardless of how mature your cloud operations are today, InterVision can help you plan, design, migrate, or operate more efficiently in the cloud. Speaking of supporting clients, InterVision is proud to be the trusted strategic service provider to over 3,000 clients across a wide range of industries and business sizes. So let's talk about the content today. Mike's going to be covering adopting cloud with confidence. Mike Shea, your presenter today, is going to bring a lot of value to this conversation, I think. Mike is the VP of Cloud Services and IT Consulting, and he has over 25 years of experience helping businesses transform their operation-driven strategy. He was formerly the CTO and Managing Director of Cloud and Digital Technology for Accenture HHS. So Mike, let's jump right in here. From your perspective, what's driving cloud adoption today?
Hey, Chris, thanks for the introduction. I appreciate it. So maybe let's move to the next slide. So I think we've all seen kind of the one slide cloud adoption drivers, right? Where they talk about resiliency and costs, optimizations, et cetera. What I want to do with this slide is kind of talk about the ways I see, the paths that I see our clients take as they adopt and engage with cloud. And not in any particular order here. I'll start with the top. By nature of the fact cloud doesn't require kind of long provision and acquisition costs associated with it, we find that there's a number of businesses at our clients that look to take advantage of, essentially, in some cases, throwaway innovation that is very rapid. It might target a new and innovative business model. It may be an emerging business model, or they're just looking to digitally transform the front end of a back end system. And so we see additive, as in net new applications that are native serverless, so the cost profile of these applications are very low, and being able to deliver them, provision and deliver, is extremely agile. And so you're able to introduce very compelling, lightweight use cases within native apps very quickly within the cloud, then of course integrating those to your back end data. So you're not necessarily tackling all the considerations of moving data and heavy applications from your back office into the cloud. The second bullet point here, application and data optimization, or data insight optimization. You know, I talk about application and data insight as two separate areas of optimization, mainly because of looking at the tools that are available to them and the considerations and what they enable for our customers. Um, so when you look at applications, there are a number of like larger companies that the way they introduce themselves into the cloud or the way they consume cloud is all about an application model. And so, as we go through this presentation, I'll get more into driving all your cloud-based decisions based on ROI and essentially a cost analysis, TCO analysis. But applications, there's a lot of our large clientele look at just the dollars they can save from an application footprint. So moving it into serverless, taking advantage of the fact that they may have applications that have dynamic scale, and by dynamic scale, I mean that they may have 100x the compute needs during a certain part of their maybe their quarter or their business year, and then at other times they don't have that demand. So that's a very compelling case. Environments, you may have an application that is that you need to do a number of different kind of either release schedules, upgrades, tests, different kind of versions of tests and audits, and you demand a number of environments to support the releases to that application, but they're very short-lived. So having environments that you can create quickly, run tests, execute tests, and then destroy can be an extremely compelling cost savings. Then, of course, there's maintenance and availability associated with the applications. I don't mention, paths here specifically. But this does address it. These are the areas of leverage that that paths can bring, combined with the ability to kind of ramp your needs up and down. The second bullet there is really around the ease of delivery. So I think from a data insight perspective, obviously the dynamic scale plays into data insights typically, as you have kind of ETL jobs, you've got processing, you might need massively parallel processing, and you can get that in today's architectures, and having tools that are integrated. I know for data that a lot of people look at do individual tool bake-offs in their data suite, but having integrated tools in the cloud can be an extremely beneficial approach in driving kind of data insight and optimization around that. And again, the ability to kind of spin up and spin down kind of environments and processing associated with that. A giant lever for some of our clients where they're doing a lot of development is in SDLC efficiencies. So any efficiencies you can get for your business analysts, your developers, your testers, when you kind of apply those efficiencies to the volume of resources that you have in those areas, they can be extremely compelling when you look at the savings as they add up on a kind of per resource basis. So that's one path. Selective service enablement. I give a couple examples here of services that we see getting taken up, and in some cases people may or may not perceive this as cloud adoption and take up. It looks like strategic services, but it absolutely is, and it's a very pragmatic way to pick off services that are critical to enabling your your business, and having them be essentially outsource the management of them with a very kind of comprehensive and available service that scales based on your usage. So some examples I give here from an AWS perspective that are maybe a little more timely right now. Obviously, there's a lot of services, but I mentioned AppStream and Workspaces and Connect. These are very timely right now. We have shameless plug for InterVision. We are offering jumpstart solutions for businesses with AppStream and workspaces, providing some promotional efforts to spin up applications and desktops, really as a kind of an offer to help our clients with coping with the realities of COVID and making their workforce more productive at home, and being able to do that remote delivery and work. Other areas from a service perspective, Salesforce, Azure AD, Office 365, these are all services. And I didn't mention, software as a service or SaaS here specifically, but that's what we're looking at right here. Or SaaS take up as a model and a path to cloud adoption. The last one is, more recently, I think people talk about migration first, right? They look at that as a primary driver. Like we need to be in the cloud 100%. Let's migrate. Well, what are the real drivers that we see around this? And DC data center consolidation, acquisitions. These are essentially decisions that are made kind of in conjunction with the last one I show there, which is IaaS IT transformation, which essentially is taking a look at eliminating hardware from the equation. So all of the other options above, the bullets above with that I mentioned, really set up hybrid situations. This last bullet can be about a complete migration. And so a transformation and a move completely away from the CapEx and hardware world. We'll talk about how, the benefits of that migration and being in a cloud only world, and obviously some of the challenges that we'll get into that a little bit later. But the other thing I would mention here from is DR. Our Zerto friends are going to talk a little bit about DR, but if you look at DR, it kind of checks a lot of boxes, right? So in a situation where you want to have in an emergency, an environment that will spin up and run in order to provide business continuity for your business, there's not when you look at it, a better use case for cloud, right? It provides that standby, kind of industrial strength, run opportunity for your business without paying any of the costs for standby hardware to enable that model. So it's a very compelling model. All of those are we're seeing driving our businesses that are looking at complete migrations. All right, Chris.
Great, thanks, Mike. Perfect. So with all that said, we've talked about what's driving folks to the cloud. What are some of the challenges that they're coming up to when adopting cloud?
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about that. So we've got the obligatory, kind of Gartner top 3. I put this in here because, I think, as Gartner often does, that they're getting this right. There is a lot of we resonate with this with our clients, right? Honestly, our conversations to some extent are tracking in this order. We have a lot of clients, and I have a slide specifically on cost optimization. But when you move from a CapEx, model where you are procuring hardware, to some extent you have a firm fixed ceiling on, your processing power, which has pluses and minuses, right? A minus may be, you can't kind of dynamically scale out and above that. A minus might be if you're using quite a bit less than that, you are not, you're not fully utilizing your investment. But it is predictable. So the spend and the CapEx, and as that over the years, as you manage those dollars, they're much more predictable. What we find as you move into the OpEx world and cloud is that there are so many variables associated with that spend, and because of the low kind of bar to introduce and provision and spin up those resources, and in such a distributed fashion, it is, in one sense, extremely enabling to the business, and in another sense, extremely dangerous to the business as that scales. And so we see a lot of concern around costs as people move into that cloud model. Security is obviously has always been a conversation. I think it's less about people being scared that they can't secure their data and their applications in the cloud. It's less about that these days, and more about clients looking to who are extremely good at security right now, are compliant, have been doing it for a long time on premise, and they look to extend those tools and those processes and procedures into the cloud. And the reality is you need to revamp that security posture, your tools, how you approach it, what you are securing and how you are securing it. It is a complete refactoring of your thinking and potentially your tools and processes as part of that journey. And so, when you look at making that move, that can be a kind of a daunting undertaking. I will say that the folks that do embrace that will find that enforcing security in the cloud can be a more can be a little bit more turnkey in some ways, right? That there's a lot fewer variables that need to be managed when you move to an IaaS solution. Just by definition, you're moving X amount under a bar that you don't need to manage, right? So you don't have hardware, you don't have physical premises, et cetera. So there's a lot of simplification that happens there. But the challenge is the tools and trying to select native versus other third-party tools, and looking at that and how you're managing that across your on-prem and cloud, and getting consistent security and compliance across that that hybrid environment. It can be daunting as you approach it. Expertise and education, I think we're going to see this bubble up here in a number of areas in these slides, but as we mentioned in security, changing your security posture and revamping how you do that work, to some extent, that is the case, across the board in cloud, right? So there's, obviously the OS support, VM support, where you're doing that within the box, so to speak, that doesn't change. But, the move into native services and all the services associated with cloud, they move at a pretty rapid pace, as well as the fact that in order to be successful in the cloud, you really need to look to automate, and everything's available as an API for you to automate. And so between the kind of evolution of services and the need to automate and the different posture that you need to kind of take on in the cloud, drives a significant need for expertise and education ongoing for your folks. Next slide, Chris. So I want to add a few others in the additional cloud adoption challenges, outside of the Gartner top 3. Organizational governance and accountability, I think, is easy to say, not as simple to implement. Just understanding and being able to trace back, at a minimum, the resources that you're spinning up in cloud, and being able to, on a month-to-month, kind of billing perspective, being able to tag and recognize, costs associated with services and mapping them back to, the business drivers for those services. Obviously, shared services, of which there's many, right, in the cloud, are are not as simple to track back and give that accountability and traceability right back to the business case. So there's work to do there, but essentially, this comes up in another, in a number of areas, as we mentioned, because of the cost. It's associated with cost, right? And so controlling costs is kind of goes hand in hand with governance and accountability around the spin up and ongoing use and management of services, and tying that back to the business in a measurable way. Acquiring and retaining cloud expertise. This is really just an extension of the Gartner item around expertise, but there's two aspects of this. One is like where you're looking to train your people as you move into a cloud, and then there's the as you face turnover, which will happen, how do you then acquire and retain that cloud expertise associated with the work you're doing? It is a challenge. Realities of managing multiple clouds. As I mentioned, the different paths to cloud earlier. If you look at optimizing applications, you may find different clouds suit that need. And if you just look at, oh, this cloud is going to suit that need slightly better than this other cloud, and you look at optimization on an app by app basis and cloud by cloud basis, and you don't factor in the realities of managing across those clouds, not only the expertise that your team will need in order to understand and manage and operate those clouds, but scaling any processes that you have, whether it's the governance associated with it, the particular security concerns, just overall the complexity of operating and managing your business over time. It can, unless understood prior to those moves, it can be a bit of a shock, right, to manage multiple clouds. So that's a challenge. Developing the right enterprise data strategy. This is not simple, right? As we look to enable use cases and take advantage of cloud, processing, whether it's in SaaS or, looking at, integrated tool set to gather data insights, or, enabling net new innovative and business models, ultimately your data will need to power, those business cases, and looking at, where is that data located? Is it located? Do you keep it back and behind prem? And then what are your considerations for that traffic to and from the cloud to access that data? You all of a sudden you have latency issues and throughput issues, and you're paying the costs of any of that data that leaves the cloud. And so you look to relocate it. And let's say in parallel, you've also, you're a global firm, right? And you have, you've got other cloud sites where you to kind of geolocate more appropriately for your business and the latency and conducting business internationally. And then all of a sudden you're looking at sovereignty concerns for that data, in those locations. So there's a host of decisions that need to be made from a data strategy perspective, and that in some cases can be a bit daunting and a bit of a challenge.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. So we've talked about the driver. What can folks do in advance? What can they be thinking about to successfully adopt the cloud?
Yeah, let's get into some of the keys. These are somewhat high level, but extremely important. And this executive sponsorship is true for those looking to take their first steps in the cloud, as true for them as it is for mature clients that are, as they say, brownfield, that have have been doing cloud work for a long time. And having an executive who understands and champions the business case or cases, will be cases, ongoing. And so let's go through the list of the things that you look for an executive sponsor. So the first one, business case. So, you have a business case for entry into the cloud. You have a business case for continued optimization within the cloud. Optimization can be anything from, okay, now let's port this application to a native app because we're getting crushed on the costs associated with this app as it runs, like it did on-prem, and we shifted it. So the business case for doing that work. The business case for any of the moves that you make associated with cloud. Executive understanding and championing that business case is going to be critical. Ensure ownership and accountability across the organization. The organization and the business, they have, and sometimes, they've got demands for technology and innovation that are not necessarily aligned with the IT support that they're given. And so the cloud enables models that are not always good. They enable kind of a distributed ability to deliver on the requirements of the business. And so making sure that as an executive sponsor, you understand how to tag across the business ownership and accountability, and being able to have that clear communication and have a means to track that back, and being able to understand that, and as it pertains to the business case, which may in some cases, and likely will, be spread across organization, in enabling the business, is extremely important, and being able to kind of navigate that with the key stakeholders across the organization. Identify and plan for business risks. This is a reality. People don't like to take business risks, but when you are trying to be disruptive or innovative or transform, there's always going to be a risk associated with it. And identifying and planning for that risk as it pertains to the achieving of the business case, and making sure the business case is understands and factors in the risks associated with the business. So perhaps, for example, the plan may take a look, you're looking to have a responsible approach to the delivery of change across your organization, whether it's rolling out an initiative, but identifying and planning for that business risk, and factoring that into the business case in a real way. Integrate IT and business organizational governance. I think this is something that people refer to it as shadow IT. I'm thinking as we enter in the cloud, this only becomes worse or better depending on your point of view. So better for the business as it pertains to being able to more rapidly engage in and participate in the development and realization of emerging or innovative business models, or evolution of the business models. But having an integrated kind of IT and business organizational governance where those two at times competing efforts have the governance such that there's visibility to and processes around enabling that, and that those are intentionally and by design factored into the business case. So it's not a surprise that the business is developing or has needs and is addressing those, that they work together lockstep. IT becomes agile in its role in supporting the business, and the business is responsible in its demands and achieving those outcomes by working with IT. Establish a cloud center of excellence. I know people have heard this, kind of the COE concept, but I think having an executive sponsor that is willing to stand behind that center of excellence. I think we may get into this a bit later, but it's one thing to have identify key people across your organization who you want to have enabling and informing on your strategy and delivery of cloud initiatives. But it's another thing to make sure that they have the time available to do that. And so you're not just saying, hey, let's set up a COE, but you're also, providing them the air cover to, achieve the support and achieve the initiatives set forth and ratified in by the Cloud Center of Excellence, and providing that support at executive level. All right, next one. Yep, cloud expertise. So identify your current and future cloud enablers. This is somewhat in order that I would say, as I look at not only clients that are looking to get into cloud, but that are in the cloud. When you look around within your organization, I think you will see the people who are going out of their way to adopt change, and to embrace and innovate with the new environment. And those are the characteristics that you want to identify early. They may not be the most experienced people in cloud, but if they're showing, the willingness to engage and, train, if you've got guys that are like, I need training. Well, this day and age, with the quick start guides and little projects and, YouTube, God forbid people are out there doing that. But the reality is there's a lot of ways to train yourself and better yourself and move forward without, well-formed, training or coursework attendance. And so you'll see, those will be your current and future cloud enablers will be the people that are ahead of the curve there, trying to adopt and work within that model to to improve themselves. The second is to invest, prioritize, and foster cloud expertise development. So I think with key on prioritize and foster. So by that, I mean, I think people understand that they need to invest in training, but the timing of that training and then the initiatives that are prioritized before, during and after that training, and how you continue to kind of foster the development of that. And so by that, I mean, if you roll out a training agenda, you throw some dollars at it, you get everyone to go to a workshop, and then these, people come back and there's not really any prioritized work. There wasn't a plan for the engagement of that training. That training can just die on the vine, really. Fostering is important because what it is understanding the people that are either training themselves or taking advantage of training that they've been given, and recognizing that and congratulating that, which we're kind of going to get to in this next bullet, which I'll go to. Recognize and reward cloud contribution. Looking to call out who are the people that are making cloud contributions, that are making a difference within your organization. And be careful that those aren't just the architects, right? They could be people working within cloud, kind of a new SDLC, or, helping to, working within kind of an agile team, that's either native or, working on cloud, but just generally achievements that occur on cloud, not necessarily, that it has to be necessarily, the architects per se, that you recognize. And then, the last point is perhaps one of the most important points, and that is choosing a partner that will educate your team along the way. Looking for support from a consultant like an InterVision. When you look at the speed and the development and the kind of exponential change associated with not only the movement to cloud, but the evolution of those services, they are changing all the time. I just had my cloud principal, Jay, just pinged me the other day, and CloudWatch introduced synthetic transactions as part of, their kind of monitoring framework. And we've been looking for that forever. And we've been using third party to do that. Without much fanfare, that capability was released, and it's going to change how we do monitoring. And so anyhow, the point is that the services are evolving quickly, and to expect your team to innovate and operate as well as stay on top of all that change is difficult. So supplementing that with a partner in the development and support of your team along the way is important. Third one is data-driven strategy, which essentially just means that you want to, before you make a decision on a direction, that you're doing that based on a business case, TCO, ROI driven decision making, IT and the business, right? So it can't be just siloed analysis. Drive that based on understanding of the impacts, across your organization at the start of the organization or start of the change, and then as mentioned here, develop measures for business and IT performance. So how do you make sure that you are getting data as you embark on your journey or project, so that you are kind of able to get visibility into the effectiveness of that decision and the change that it's meant to bring about. Those measures then allow you to regularly assess, evaluate, and course correct. That is more and more important as we move to cloud, because of the agility of cloud and the agility of the services. It affords us the opportunity to regularly course correct and change. It does not penalize, on your selections, right? You can reassess and change. And so being able to do that is extremely important. Plan for and manage risk. Again, this is kind of a theme for the cloud, right? And that is design your delivery approach such that you expect to run into failure. So applications do this in the cloud. They're self-healing. They design for failure, which sounds ridiculous, right? But designing for components to fail, designing for your plans to fail, and have an approach to manage that risk and recognize it and change is extremely important. And then all of this kind of plays into, as you kind of operate with the first four bullets, you'll essentially be introducing and designing for and managing agile organization transformation. So an organization that is able to regularly assess, evaluate, and course correct is developing, is kind of transforming into an agile organization. Okay, Chris. So this, I think this is a diagram that folks have seen before, but essentially this is, everyone wants to be in the top right, over time. So the upper portion of this is all about value as you move to the cloud. And if you look through, these steps that apply to, a migration, extremely important part of that is the foundational build and the migration. But you can see that the move to value through these two paths is you achieve value at different rates. The cloud native rate obviously is a faster path to value. And when we looked at those cloud adoption paths, the people that are looking to enable applications and build net new applications, in cloud native are achieving that value very quickly. The other approach is a move and improve approach that we see, and I think Gartner reports on. The majority of migrations are, looking at this type of approach, and that is to minimize the variables associated with the migration. So you move, and then you improve, and that's why you see that bottom curve is a little flatter, and then it kind of exponentially straightens as you look to optimize and operate those environments, in the cloud. Next one, Chris. So this is, InterVision's cloud migration process. This methodology, we have our migration competency certification, and through the course of that, we obviously have done a lot of this work, and I think folks will recognize, a lot of these stages in a typical migration. With the furthest right being some of the most important things that you can do as part of the migration, in longer term, which is operate it and optimize it. And those two go hand in hand. The more you're optimizing, the better it is and easier it is to operate. But prior to that, in this migration plan, the foundational build, we are seeing a number of clients that are brownfield or mature in their use of cloud. And by mature, I mean they've been using it exclusively for a long period of time, that are looking to are looking to rebuild their foundation based on having moved very quickly in their adoption prior and not thinking through exactly how their needs and requirements for a foundation. And by foundation, I mean Amazon's got a landing zone that includes kind of a pattern for accounts, network, security, and guardrails associated with that. Some version of that well thought out foundational build. Doesn't have to be the official landing zone, but something that's well thought out and understanding how your organization is going to grow, how your accounts are laid out, best practices, and well architected approach to doing that. And I have an example of a client that is is looking to has been mature for a while, and now they talk about this happy place that they're working with Amazon to build, which is they're revisiting the build out of their foundation, and they're going to migrate to that foundation. So they are revisiting and rebuilding a foundation and then moving to it. And so again, I think that's an extremely important part of the overall migration process. Next, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So once folks are in the cloud or they're operating, what are some keys to successful cloud optimization?
Sure. I think we've touched on some of these a little bit near the end, but all of our clients are universally, whether they're greenfield and looking to get ahead of the curve and understanding how they will manage cloud costs, or they're in the cloud during a migration or post migration. There's a lot of focus on managing cloud costs. And so these are some steps, I'll put in here, I'll give you a little context around it, but there's more to it than just, tools, right? So, in the case of, Amazon's Cost Explorer, or, the Cloud Health or the Cloud Checkers of the world, there is only so much you can do based on, reports from the tools. So we won't necessarily get into that, but I think as I go through this, you'll understand a little bit about what I'm trying to to point out there. So obviously eliminating unused infrastructure and services. It's not always obvious as you are moving quickly as an organization within the cloud, that you are that things get kind of marooned or disconnected. Storage gets you've got disconnected EBS, or you've got services that were spun up by someone to in a sandbox where they were kind of testing it and checking it out, and lo and behold, 3 months later, there's 12K worth of running service costs that you discover. Optimizing compute, storage, and data. So compute being, obviously your processing. If you look at, the different types of EC2s out there as they evolve from a version perspective, every time, and the next improved type comes out, the cost profile for them drops by 50%. And so staying on top of that it can be extremely can lead to some extremely good savings. Having said that, there's a reason those that are evolving as types, and that is that they're the characteristics of that EC2 can change, and so that can impact your application. So it's not as simple as, I need to make sure I'm on the latest version at all times and let me automate that, right? Like that becomes there's got to be intervention there in managing that. So again, it's something that can be reported, but it's not something that can be changed unless you have intervention, and that needs to be done in a way that doesn't introduce business risk. Storage, storage is an area where we see people grow extremely quickly, and they don't necessarily look to optimize that, whether it's life cycles on S3 or unattached storage, or just not having a good plan for the storage type based on the usage profile. And by data, I just mean where is the data that you store in the cloud appropriate? Do you need to retain that? What is the life cycle of your data? Let's not just look at optimizing storage. Let's understand the data, and the data flow, right? Is it flowing out of the cloud in mass? Are you paying fees for that? Maybe you're halfway through a migration and you've got, pipes that are still very active, and, and there's, data flowing through them. Was that factored into your business case as part of this migration? So a number of things to consider there from a data perspective. Third one is, people talk a lot about savings plans, and they talk a lot about reserved instances, but there's very refined professional financial operations services out there. InterVision has a FinOps service as well, and that service is more than just, hey, let's get you hooked up with an RI or a savings plan because it showed up on AWS Cost Explorer that was an opportunity. It is a real intentional look at the managing the financials of the resources. And so there's hedging associated with it, and it's done across a larger client base. So what it enables is for our clients to get into, either more aggressive savings plans that they wouldn't have signed up for in the first place because they would worry about getting kind of stuck with that financial plan and being in a state of overspend as their compute is dropped. But these hedging financial operation services look at that and provide much more flexible plans, whether it's time duration or ability to switch those plans midterm. There's just a lot more flexibility, and what it allows and enables is for you as a client working with the FinOps service to commit to higher savings plans that drive more aggressive savings without the risk factor of being kind of stuck with that after let's say you have InterVision come in and do a lot of optimization on applications, compute, and storage, and all of a sudden your usage has dropped. And so you're sitting there with a savings plan that has that's committed to a higher compute. And so at that point, you just revisit that, and you have that flexibility with the professional financial operation service. The fourth one we talked about this in the as one of the drivers for cloud adoption, but optimizing applications is critical, not only to saving money, but to operating in the cloud. Applications that are just purely lift and shift from on-prem are not optimized to take advantage of the cloud from an execution, from a cost profile perspective, or from a monitoring perspective, right? So a continual agenda to assess and optimize around applications is critical to managing your costs. Optimize team efficiency. We talked about this as well, but any change that you make, whether it's automation, looking at CI/CD where you didn't have it before, evolution of your application and how your team develops around it in a more agile and efficient fashion with integrated tools, et cetera. Anywhere you can enable your team, around and automate, those are going to be efficiencies that the team engage. Is it where the team is able to take on more responsibility and help mobilize and affect change more efficiently for your business? And then design for governed cost efficiency. So what that means is, who is able to, who and how, right? Who and how are, so who is making the changes in the cloud, or who's authorized to do so? And then how, through what process must they follow in order to affect those changes? So spin up that net new compute, storage, data, service, et cetera. And having, a process that doesn't necessarily look to burden that, but it looks to audit. I think audit's the key in that, it's more of being able to have traceability to it and kind of report on it, so that ultimately you get, you encourage more responsible use and execution of those services. Okay, Chris, next.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
So what are some keys to successful cloud operations?
Yeah, so we're going to get into a couple different areas that are directly answer this question, but with just looking at kind of at what are you looking at from a characteristic perspective in order to be more successful from your cloud operations? And I pointed this out when I was showing our migration methodology, but being very kind of considerate and taking the time to design for a secure, reliable, and compliant foundation within Amazon, in this case, is extremely critical. It, like anything architectural or anything really at all, right? The foundation provides the stability and defines, kind of the the possibilities for what you're able to achieve. And so if that is done poorly, you're not going to be able to achieve high performance operations. So your foundation has to be designed for high performance operations in order to be successful. Governed automation. We have kind of gone from people not really understanding automation to people understanding automation, and for automation to become pervasive throughout the organization. But the question is, do you have governance on that automation? Is this being instituted with all different types of tools? Is there any evaluation of of what they are is being automated. Is there reuse? Are you introducing automation that actually shouldn't be in place because what it's doing is actually exacerbating, uh, a cost variable that you are trying to manage. So governance around that automation, understanding how to responsibly automate, reuse it, having a strategy for it, knowing where it will be engaged, and having some governance across it is important, because automation is absolutely important for operation. But I mentioned governance because it needs to be kind of part of a larger picture design for supporting operations. Cloud native service selection. This is not pointing out that you must have you must have cloud native services, and cloud native services are kind of the be all end all. What this is a responsible selection of the cloud native services that will best enable operations for your solution. It does not mean that every service that is available or every net new service needs to be implemented, but understanding and staying on top of those native services and looking at how they can enable operations for your cloud is extremely important. And if I can say that if you aren't using native services, you're attempting to do it with third party, that you have that you are missing a chance to you're missing a chance to be a high performance cloud operations shop. And then the last bullet, which perhaps people will be tired of by the time I'm done here, but cloud optimization agenda for applications. If you lift and shift applications, or you move poorly architected applications, or you're not designing for self-healing, auto-scaling, you're not taking advantage of all of these ways to improve the performance and stability of your application, not only to reduce costs, but to eliminate downtime. Through automation and propagation of change, or through self-healing within the application itself. You could have the best cloud operations and tools and staff in town, but if your applications are brittle and failing, it's going to feel like your operations shop is failing. Then we throw this up here because it's oh, sorry, Chris, I was just going to say this up on the other slide before you go there. Hey, Chris, the slide before this.
Yeah, sorry, it's a delay there.
Yeah, so through 2022, insufficient cloud skills will delay half of enterprise IT organizations' migration to the cloud by 2 years or more. This is one of those, we'll get into ways that can be prevented, but it is a reality. I think that's a quote that is impactful. And again, it's partially planning for risk and being in the realities of change. And understanding that and being informed by that based on the experience of others. That data's out there. Your partners can talk to you about it. The best choice for your organization, trust me, is not to go and have, 3 vendors, vie to give you the absolute cheapest cost for your migration. You want to work with a vendor who is certified, has the competency, and is able to talk you through the journey, and is able to talk to you about the importance of the foundational build and the execution of that migration, because all of that will play into the success of your migration, your ability to operate that once that migration is complete, and is more of a is the appropriate way to avoid these surprises where you have false starts and stalls, et cetera, associated with migration. Okay, sorry, next one, Chris. So operating cloud environment in production. If you're moving quickly to the cloud as part of a migration, or if you are in a situation where, perhaps you're looking at maybe hybrid or, multi-cloud, and you're looking to, looking for an option. You've always, maybe you've outsourced your management in the past and looking to do so in the future. There's a number of different reasons that you may look for a managed service. And InterVision has been doing managed services around hosting for a long time. And as a premier partner with Amazon, we are also unique in that we are partnering with Amazon and around a managed service to manage your workloads in production in Amazon. And so the combination in that partnership is quite unique. And if you look at next slide, Chris, the foundation of Amazon Managed Service, which our friends at Amazon are going to talk about today, but it combines the landing zone. It combines, a management portal that allows you to kind of submit and effect change based on a service catalog and RFCs, and it's got purpose-built automation. And then you look at the bolt-on that InterVision has in working with AMS around all the services that we have, and not only migrating you into AMS, but then managing and operating and handling any exceptions or optimizations that you want to do as part of that, whether it's, as we mentioned, cost optimization, external architecture, if you have, third-party firewalls involved, if you have other exceptions to your business, like your application path to production is one that, you want to refactor and optimize, CI/CD, DR into this, and providing you kind of the enablement to migrate to and take advantage of this combined managed service by InterVision and AWS. More to come on that. I think with Amazon's going to talk quite a bit about AMS. Next slide, Chris. So I won't necessarily get into this too much, but because I think it's going to be covered in spades with Amazon, but time to value, you are not designing for that foundation is extremely important, and it can be a time intensive process. If that's pre-designed for you and you're migrating and you don't have to kind of worry about how are you going to be supported in production, it accelerates you dramatically. That combined with automation and the kind of standard, the well architecture and standard processes, drive an ROI of up to 243% improvement. Higher compliance and security standards, as you imagine, it's designed from the ground up to achieve that. And then just your ability to offload these operational tasks and migrations to InterVision and Amazon just allows you to focus on the differentiators for your business, which are ultimately your applications and your workloads. Okay, Chris, next. So for those paying attention, this is a slide that Chris already spoke to. I wanted to revisit it just briefly. We have 12 locations. We have 3 knock socks that operate 24/7, and obviously have the experience and certifications and architect and engineers to support you in your cloud needs, and to be quite clear on on our services, whether it's architecture, migration, DevOps, storage, ML, AI, big data, BI, security, SysOps, disaster recovery. We have offerings that and support for across these. So if you for example, if let's say you come to us and you want to talk about cost optimization, it touches on so many of these areas. How you're going to handle your data. Are you optimized from a security perspective? Automations associated with DevOps, storage lifecycle, um, your, how your operations, sysops. So it crosses these competencies, and so um, this blend of services, I think, when brought to bear for our clients, is extremely compelling, and allows us to, with our history, as I think Chris mentioned, and kind of deep experience as it pertains to on-prem and cloud, we are literally a one-stop shop for your needs and your support. All right, Chris, I think that's all I have here.
Great, great. Thanks, Mike. And as Mike mentioned, the following presentations, we're going to dive more into the AMS service with the AWS team, and then Zerto will be talking about IT resilience in the cloud. However, Mike, we did have a few questions that came in that I wanted to make sure we got the chance to touch on. So the first one is, I'm a bit concerned about InterVision's ability to support a global organization. Based with InterVision being based in the US, how can you operation?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. I think I will answer that in two parts. One is, we often get questions around how we are able, how we are impacted by COVID. And the reality is, we have a diverse and geographically distributed set of architects that support our businesses. We are optimized on a remote delivery model. We are able to deliver our services remotely. We optimize the processes and our diagrams, and how we do that interactive virtual kind of over the shoulder work with our clients and enabling. And so we've kind of optimized around that, and that extrapolates to our clients, which we have a few, or actually more than a few, a large number of global clients, where we are supporting their operations out of globally distributed cloud site and locations. I think the client I mentioned that is moving to the happy place, that they operate out of the Philippines. We have support in cloud architecture support, kind of as you'd imagine, because we have our NOC SOC, which is 7x24, that we are globally distributed, and have workforce in India that works on kind of our after hours, and so between India and onshore, we actually have architects and people actively supporting as part of our services 24/7. And our ability to it's quite simple, actually, to support the other cloud sites, and it's very important that you have vendors that know how to do that, because actually moving your services around from a global perspective is actually part of that cost optimization model. And so understanding the balances, the trade-offs of geolocating that processing versus having that be optimized in a running and operating in a different site is are important things that you want to have as with a global partner, and we have all of those skills and capabilities.
Great, thanks, Mike. So the last one here is we touched about a little bit on gave quite a bit of information on cost optimization, but how can my organization start? What's a good first step?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. If you look at our approach, InterVision's approach, I think it's, obviously I think it's a good approach. But I mentioned that, all the tools are the same, or similar, get to similar data, but it is the right place to start, right? You want to run Cost Explorer, or run your Cloud Health or Cloud Checker, and you do want to get an understanding for the results that come out of that. Having said that, right at that point, I suggest that you engage with a partner and get assistance, because the dollars that they look to just report on savings is just the tip of the iceberg on what can be achieved. As we mentioned, like the financial ops, which allows you to sign in on higher, more flexible savings plans, as well as the architect intervention in changing upgrading the types that you're using as from an EC2 perspective, combing through and locating unused storage volumes, adding life cycle policies and procedures while understanding the business implications of those changes. I think that's important. So that all is, again, a journey, but first steps, I think you got to start with the tools and engaging with a partner.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Sure.
Again, be sure to stay tuned presentations. But for any of those of you who are interested in continuing the conversation or have questions for us, or would like to learn more about our ability to support your cloud adoption journey, be sure to visit intervision.com and find the Contact Us page and fill out the form there, and one of our experts will reach out to you right away to continue the discussion. So thanks again, Mike, and thank you to everyone here who has joined our conversation. I hope you found the information insightful.